Recording is in progress. Everything is good in the world. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our online webinar. There's a few familiar faces from previous ones. My name is Reverend Alan Moss, and I am a pioneer vicar based over in Walthamstow. And one day a week, I help out at the with a comms team, a Chelmsford comms team, and we've been doing things like this, webinars, for a little while, and people are going to sort of slowly join us as we go along, I'd imagine. So they'll just catch up as we go. Welcome. Tonight, this one's been in my mind for a little while. For those of you who've been to some of our webinars before, we've discussed things from the nature of online church, what it's all about. We've discussed the basics of how to set up Facebook pages and all this kind of stuff. But tonight, I thought would be super important for us as a church, as a community, to be thinking about, you know, if we think about online church and connecting particularly with young people and future generations, wouldn't it be good to actually have a few young people in the room to tell us their point of view and tell us what they've been thinking, what they've been experiencing over the last couple of years through lockdown? So that's exactly what we've decided to do. I'm going to introduce some of the team, first of all, just to let you know. So Tom Geldon, who's there, Tom heads up the Chelmsford Diocesan Communications team. And Tom is with us. He's kind of doing a little bit of the background hosting for us tonight. And also James Cottis, he runs a company called Digital Spirit, and he essentially looks after a lot of websites and things like that across the diocese, and is essentially a bit of an online guru. So James is here as well in a bit of the background, keeping an eye on questions and stuff. So as we go throughout the night, if you've got questions that you want to pop in the chat, then please do. That's really helpful. We're going to have a breakout time later on as well for people to kind of, you know, take in what we've heard and then come back with some questions for our young people. Again, the session tonight is being recorded, just so you know that. So if you prefer not to be seen on screen, then just pop your camera off. That's just that's up to you. So if you do want to ask a question, you can keep your camera off and just turn your sound on, etc. I mean, there is no need for where the fire exits are. Wherever your front door is, or back door, or side window, that's where your fire exit is. So feel free to run and jump out if you need to. But other than that, I guess I'm going to hand over to Emma. I was going to do a little bit of an intro. So Emma, I'm going to go off of literally your signature in your email, because I thought that's the most official, right? So Emma is a children and families missioner for the Barking area and part of the mustard seed team for the diocese. Is that right?
Yep, that's just about right, Alan. Yeah,
just about right. That sounds right. I mean, I was going to figure out Emma can dance and sing, and he's very good at interpretive dance as well, if she ever comes to your church. And then Charlie, and here it says Charlie is a youth advisor, part of the mustard seed team in the Colchester area. Is that right?
It's just about right. Yeah, just about right.
Okay, smashing. But between the two of them, I think they essentially cover the whole of the diocese, helping out churches with working with their young people and children and youth ministries and all that kind of stuff. So take note if you're not sure who they are, and call them to your church, because I'm sure they need to get out and about. They've not got enough to do. So I'm going to hand over to Emma and Charlie, and they're going to lead us through this evening.
Great, thanks, Alan. And it's really nice to see some familiar faces. Can everybody hear me? Because my laptop says I'm muted. Okay, I'll carry on. As Alan said, we're part of the mustard seed team across the diocese. One of the really great things that we get to do is that we get to support the youth synod, and the 4 young people who have brilliantly given up their time this evening to be with you are part of our youth synod, and I know they've got a lot of fantastic stuff to share with you. So it's really going to be over to them. We're going to give them some questions just to kind of guide them on their way. We've had a bit of a chat about things before, and they will be honest with you, and that's great, because they want to share their experience. So is everybody ready? Yeah, okay. So our first question then to our young people, and you might like to introduce yourselves first. Do you want to just introduce yourselves? So we'll start with Anna.
Hello, I'm Anna. I have done a couple of Youth Synod sessions. I'm part of the Living Way, and I was part of the team for Growing Young Leaders the past 2 years. So I've done various things online, as everyone else has.
Brilliant, thanks Anna. Joel, you're next on my screen.
I'm Joel. I live in Colchester, and I'm part of Living Way. I've done a couple of Youth Synod stuff as well, and I was part of the Young Leaders course that Anna was helping out, which was really good. And yeah.
Thanks, Joel. Penny, you're next.
Hi, I'm Penny. I've only done a few of these Youth Synod things, and I really haven't got to know a lot. So, yeah.
But you've got a lot to share with us, Penny. Anne Finlay.
I'm Finlay. I go to St Lawrence's Church in Upminster, and I've been at Youth Synod since it started.
Brilliant, thank you. So you can see we've got people from right across the diocese with a range of experiences. So the first question we wanted to ask you is, during the pandemic and now, what do you think have been the advantages of online church? So Anna, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's been a really useful way to stay connected through the pandemic, and a really useful way to stay connected with my faith. And it's also meant I can kind of be involved in a lot more, especially since going back to school. Things like the Living Way, it's been a lot more convenient kind of for my whole family to be able to do things online and not have to, you know, go lots of places and things like that. So yeah.
Thank you. Joel.
The main thing I sort of found useful about online church is the fact that it doesn't dominate your day as much as a regular church would. So I like doing like lots of sports or just going out at the weekends, and I can't go out on like for the whole day on a Sunday because of church. But with online church, that's something that I was able to do. So I could go to online church, and if I wanted to, I could go outside and do something for the rest of the day, or go on a day out. And that was something that online church sort of brought that was really useful. And also because you weren't in the room with people, it sort of felt a bit more relaxed as well, which was another benefit of it.
Excellent, thank you. Penny.
Online church, it really helped because before that, I guess I kind of wasn't praying as much, but I did go to church every week. But then when we split apart, before I kind of just said, oh, we went to church, the end. I saw people, the end. And when you're away from them, you kind of take it for granted when you're away from people. But online church also helped me pray as well. And it gave me a chance to practice my faith a little bit more as well. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. That's really honest. Finlay.
Personally, for me, the key thing was it was more convenient. So me and my dad, we sometimes go to see rugby, and the matches can often be Sunday afternoons, and it becomes significantly easier when church is online rather than when I'm actually going to church. It was also useful for continuing my faith during lockdown, and if it hadn't, my faith might have waned.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for your honesty there. So there's a lot of convenience around online church for you, and things like Living Way, saving you trips out. So, of course, the next question is, they're the advantages. What have been and are the disadvantages of online church? So if we, are we happy to go in the same order, Anna?
Sounds good. I think with a lot of things online, I found this with school as well, it can feel quite sort of optional. Like, oh, I can look at that later or do that later. So it was quite hard sometimes to kind of keep up with it and stay consistent and still join in with a lot of things. And I think, you know, my schoolwork suffered from that kind of mindset as well. You know, it was, oh, I can finish that later or I'll join it in a bit. But yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Joel?
I sort of felt during online church, even though at the church I would go to for online church, it was sort of shorter than regular service, I could like feel my concentration slipping like really quickly, because I guess because you're just not physically there, and obviously it's no matter how much you tell yourself, you're never going to be in the same room as the other person, so you feel less like pressured to pay attention and like to focus on what's being said. And despite like me trying to focus more, I just couldn't help but like lose concentration because it's just not, you're just not in the moment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the main downside for me.
Okay, thank you. Penny?
What I had said earlier, I guess this for me, like what I had said earlier, not seeing about stuff, about the not seeing people thing. For me, socializing is probably something that is actually, I guess, kind of in my personality a little bit as well, because I'm a bit extroverted. So socializing, not being able to see people, I guess it was very lonely when you actually watched online church, and usually you hear choirs singing and everyone else singing with you and talking and prayers and everything else. You don't hear that when you're just, when it's probably you, your dad, your sister and your mom just in one room, even though yeah, you guys are singing, it's just like it's not that loud, beautiful, like kind of sound that you hear from everything else. Yeah,
Brilliant, thank you. Finlay?
I'm pretty much going to be repeating what everyone else has said, but yeah, I find it more difficult to focus, to pay attention to the service. Now, I serve at my church, so I'm a crucifer at the moment. So I'm quite used to during church doing something, and I'm in most things I normally do something, and when I'm not, I do find that my focus slips. I find it harder to pay attention, and I almost can't see the service as well as I do in person.
Thanks, Finlay. That's really interesting. I think that's really helpful to just give us that overview. And there are obviously things about being with people, about worshipping together, about doing rather than being a little bit more passive if you're at home, and things about concentration. I think a lot of us as adults would identify with all that as well. Okay, so the next question is, this is a more general question about kind of people your age. So do you think in your experience, do you have a divide between your kind of online person and your in-person life? Is there a divide, or is it all kind of merged into one? Anna?
I think for me personally, I kind of have to have a divide between my life online and my life in real life. Kind of for my mental health. I feel like we all entered the void, as they say, in lockdown, of constantly scrolling and feeling sucked into your phone or a screen. But I think for me, it was quite important that I actually took a step back from that every now and again for my mental health, for my physical health. And it's something I personally do try to keep separate, because I think it's a much healthier way of being online and having a life online. But I think in general, it's something that a lot of young people might struggle with. And I think it is, it's so, I think the online world is so full of young people that it can feel that way sometimes for a lot of people.
Thanks, Anna. Joel, what's your experience?
Well, through my experience, like when I'm, for example, messaging someone on my phone, I can have like a whole conversation with them, and then if I would see them the next day at school, it's almost as if that conversation never happened. So it's like a very good example of like the divide between online and like in real life, because it's just sort of like I can have a conversation with people, and in real life, we can see it's sort of like forgotten that that's never happened. And sometimes there's like some certain people I'll talk to a lot in real life, but I'll never really phone them or message them. And there's other people that I'll talk to a lot more online, even though I do see them in real life, but I never really say anything to them. And it sort of is like two separate worlds, really. And I think it's a lot more divided than a lot of people think, in my opinion.
Thanks, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's that way how we carry on those conversations, or just put them to one side and have a different conversation. Penny?
I do divide my two worlds, because if I just need to it's a good thing to divide your two worlds, because one, I guess when you don't, things can get a little bit mixed up sometimes, and you kind of, I guess, lose your way in like reality of what's real and what's not, fake and real, you know. So it's good to definitely divide them so that you know the difference between what's real and what's not. But a lot of people, they just can't do that. And influencers, they do that a lot as well, because I think that they don't know the difference between their online world and their real world. Because influencers, they like to compete with each other to see who can get the most likes, the most views, and then they lose sense of where they actually are in a way. They just kind of lose themselves sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks. So you think it's important that we have that divide then? Yeah. Finlay, what about you?
Let's keep mine separate as much as don't really have an online world. I have very little social media. My limit was WhatsApp, which I got about a year ago. And even that, I only really used to arrange meetings in person. I much prefer to talk to someone in person than online. And if I am, and I have had in my life maybe one conversation by messaging. I will either call or FaceTime or whatever it may be, but I much prefer to be able to talk rather than message.
Thanks, Finlay. Can I just ask you, do you feel like you miss out because you're not on that social media, or does that not bother you?
It doesn't really bother me. As I said, I arrange meetings in person rather than via social media. There's like some games I might play with friends or whatever, but I have absolutely no regrets about not having the various different Facebook or whatever it may be.
Great, thanks Finlay, it's really helpful. Right, I think I'm handing over to Charlie at this point.
Thank you, Emma. Is my microphone working? Fantastic, super. So this question may have been a little bit covered in some of what we've already said, but just delving into it in a bit more depth, if it has at all, has online stuff helped in your spiritual life and spiritual development in your faith? And if so, how? Anna.
I think online church most definitely has helped me grow my faith. I started quite a lot of the things I do now online. So the Living Way I started during lockdown. A lot of the leadership stuff I did was online. So that definitely helped me grow my faith and grow kind of my community and the kind of fellow Christians I know now through lockdown and online church. So I think in a way it has really helped me to grow in my faith and grow in my spirituality during such a difficult period for a lot of people who were struggling with their faith. So I think in a way that's been really helpful and kind of a blessing for me because I haven't had that struggle. I've kind of grown from it, which has been really, really nice, I guess.
Awesome, thank you, Anna. And that's really interesting as well to notice how you started some relationships and some like commitments online and they've continued into post-pandemic face-to-face life. That's really interesting. Joel.
I didn't really feel that my faith was like improved or like changed in any way through the lockdown. But I sort of felt that my relationship with other people sort of improved through that, because it sort of impressed me that these people were willing to like create an entire online church, considering I don't think many of them knew technology very well, and it was quite a struggle each week. But the fact that they were willing to do this every week to like keep this community going showed how much like it meant to them, and sort of felt a little bit personal to me that they were willing to do this, for example, to see me every week, although it was other people as well. And that felt really nice. So although my faith didn't really develop much, I didn't think, I sort of felt that my relationships with people from church I felt more respectful for them.
That's amazing. So people keeping community going and that family connection that you have as a church, being able to keep that going in the dark times, really, quite a profound moment for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Penny.
For me, like a lot of other people before me have said, I started. Am I on?
Yeah.
I started a lot of my things online as well, like guides and brownies. I started guides online and only just recently started to all meet everyone in person. And then I started my youth synod online as well. And I did a lot of things online. I also had lots of I really don't know if my thing grew or not, but if it did, then I'm sure that in some way, yes, online church did help, and having those online prayers as well sometimes did help as well. So yeah.
Fantastic. So it didn't just affect like one aspect of your church life, it affected all different areas of your life. That's really cool. Finlay.
For me, it didn't necessarily develop, but as I've already mentioned, it helped me sustain it. If church and everything had been completely shut down, if it hadn't moved online, my faith might have weakened or waned during COVID, and many people's did. So I'm glad that online church was here to help me sustain it, but I don't necessarily think it improved it much.
That's really interesting. So you sort of saw it as a kind of way of it keeping going rather than starting something new and fresh, but it was actually just something that kept you going at that time. Interesting points. Thank you, team. Our next question is, were podcasts or any apps or anything like that that was available to you, were they helpful at all in your faith life, but also in just that time? Did you find them helpful? Did you use them? Anna, we'll come to you first.
I think in terms of apps, the only app I really downloaded was a Bible app that gives you, a daily scripture, a prayer prompt every day, things like that to kind of help you. It's something, it's in your pocket, a Bible in your pocket, and it's quite sort of convenient, and definitely, while I'm at college and busy, has helped me to kind of still think about my faith and kind of make that part of my daily life. I think kind of a lot of more content creators during the pandemic. I kind of expanded things like my Instagram feed changed quite a lot during the pandemic to following a lot more kind of people with a much more Christian, outspoken view on a lot of things that were going on. And now I am kind of quite open about my faith, and it helped me to kind of be more open about my faith on social media by seeing other people doing the same. I didn't really find any good podcasts. I did try, but there were none that really stuck with me. But yeah, I think mainly the Bible app and kind of other content creators who were very outspoken about their faith really helped me.
That's awesome as well. The whole it links with what Penny was saying earlier about influencers and how there can be like positive influences and negative influences in some ways. So that might be something about Instagram to come back to later. That's really cool. Joel.
I tried to use a podcast. I think the Bible in 1 Year app I tried to use, and it worked for about a week, and then after that I really tried, but I couldn't really be bothered to do it, and I just didn't enjoy it. I just find that I quite enjoy listening to people talk when I'm in the room with them, but when I'm listening to someone like through an app who's not speaking directly to me, I find it like hard to pay attention or to just really care about what they're saying. So it was worth a try, but it didn't really work for me. Yeah.
That's a really good point. The whole idea of it being a personal message and being something that you're hearing for the first time live kind of thing can be different. That's really interesting. Penny.
In a way, yeah, the podcast that we listened to kind of helped me revise on a few things that I had either forgotten or just remembered but didn't really take much interest into. Sometimes I think if I didn't have those like podcast things, then it would be like Jesus, like for the Easter story, basically it'd be like Jesus died, Jesus came back after 3 days, the end. But there's more to that story because because of the things that happened, the events that happened before Jesus died, came back 3 days later. So it was nice to revise on those things because yes, I had already heard about them and I knew what happened before. But it was nice to revise on them, and I guess the podcast kind of did help me to revise a few things and look back on a few things that I hadn't really like taken a notice to. And sometimes those podcasts, they can go into lots of detail sometimes, like and it's kind of interesting because sometimes these podcasts, one are telling stories and they're also kind of showing a point of view as well. So it's nice to see that from someone else's point of view as well. So yeah.
Hearing different voices, different perspectives on things is really, really helpful. That's great. Finlay.
For me, I didn't really use any apps or podcasts. What I did do, so I got into the habit of carrying my Gideon's pocket Bible, which I'd show you if it wasn't upstairs in my blazer. But
That's commitment, that is. It's in your blazer.
Yeah. But I still carry that. I much prefer a physical book and physical objects rather than apps or whatever. So for me, apps and podcasts didn't help me as much, but my pocket Bible definitely did.
That's really interesting as well, because there's often a conception like that, a perception that people in your age range prefer to read on a screen or like to listen to audiobooks, but actually to hear that you prefer to have a physical copy of a book of the Bible is actually really interesting to hear. So final question before we go into some breakout rooms, I think. This is quite a broad question, but we're going to throw it out there. What now, seeing how things have been and taking the pandemic into consideration as well, what would you like church to look like? Anna, no pressure, but we're going to you first.
Okay, I think it's quite a tricky one because every church is different, every community is different. I know that my church community struggled with trying to connect some of the elderly people online because they didn't have the facilities to look at Facebook or join a Zoom call. And I know that that's something that a lot of churches struggled with, and it's going to happen. But at the same time, I enjoyed having things that I could do online as part of my everyday, and I still do a lot of my kind of own personal worship online, even though I do attend in-person church. And I think in-person church is so lovely, and it's such a nice thing to have because you're able to be there with everyone. And I think we all took it for granted before the pandemic. But a lot of things now have moved to the kind of hybrid option of having a mix of the two. And I think that's a really great way because you're still able to outreach quite often younger people who prefer online ways of interacting with their church, but you're also able to have that lovely community in person. And I think it's a really great way for online get new people and attract people to the church and kind of expand your community. But it's also really nice to have the in-person connection as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Anna. Joel.
What I quite like to see is like a bit like what Anna said, kind of like an integration between online and like real life church, because I sort of feel like the services work better in person. But if you could just have, like, for example, on an Instagram or Facebook page, like a few minute reflections that you could post on them, and in the middle of the service you could say something like, oh, if you want anything else, check out our Instagram page and got other like interesting content on there. And you could sort of treat it as like the social media or the online isn't just a substitution for the real life stuff, and it's sort of like working both together. So I sort of feel like if you had both of them, you can access like two different groups of people instead of them just one.
Awesome, thank you, Joel. Penny.
To be honest, no one can please everyone, to be honest, because everyone has their own set of rules, everyone has their own set of opinions. No one can please everyone. For me, because I've got a lot of old people in my church, and maybe everyone else might have, or some other people might have a lot of old people in their church. They don't really know how to use social media, I guess. So I think that it's a good thing if we probably try, maybe just, I really like doing church in person for me, and a lot of other people might like doing that as well, but sometimes other people might not want to do that, and they might want to do something else, and that's fine. Good for them, because I can do my thing, they can do their thing, so just, you can't please everyone, that's all.
And that's, we were talking about that the other week, weren't we, Penny, and saying how hard it is to cater for everybody, but also to recognize that you just can't please everybody all the time. That's a really difficult thing. Yeah, thank you for being so honest. Finlay.
Personally, I agree that the kind of hybrid option is best. Now, personally, I much prefer to go to church in person, but not everyone does. And I think it's important to be able to connect with as many people as possible. And if there's absolutely no one interested in online, great, it means you can just focus on the physical church. Similarly, if absolutely no one's interested in the physical church, you can focus more on the online. But in general, I think that you're going to have a split or a partial split. And I think based on that, the best option is a kind of hybrid option with both physical and online.
Fantastic, thank you, Finlay. Focusing energies where they're sort of most needed in each context. That's really interesting. Fantastic. Thank you, team, for sharing in this part. I think what we're going to do now is hand over to Tom and James, who are, am I right, or Alan, or someone come and save us.
I just wanted to see how long you could flounder in the water there and see what was going on. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I have been scribbling away. I've got loads of thoughts and stuff that you like from what you've been saying and questions. But what we're going to do, is we're going to go into, I would say breakout groups, but I think because there's, I know that I've had a lot of messages from people saying that they were coming, but now they can't, and they're going to watch the replay thing. So here's the thing, we want to make it entertaining for people who are going to watch it later. So we're going to break into essentially one breakout group. So our 4 or stroke 6 guest speakers, me, Tom and James are going to stay here, and then we're going to put everyone else into a group. So you can just sort of, reflect on what you've heard, any thoughts. And the brief that I gave to Charlie and Emma was, get the young people to be nice and chatty, which they have been. They've been amazing. So, yeah, absolutely, Judith, a little round of applause for the young people. But obviously, now I'm expecting the same from the grown-ups in the Zoom room, so I want you to come back with plenty of questions for the young people as well. So we've got no awkward silences, although between me, Charlie and Emma, I reckon we can fill any of them. But yeah, so is that all right? Does that make sense? Great, we'll disperse then. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was helpful, just to give you a little bit of a reflection. We were doing some deep theological reflections in our group, talking about what people are eating and all that kind of so it was very intense in this room. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw it out to questions. Hopefully you've got some questions. If not, we've got some sort of stirring already, but it's a great opportunity there. In fact, it's probably better that there's less of us this evening, because I don't know what your contexts are, but maybe when you ask your question, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, we can see who you are, but just sort of saying where you're based, perhaps, if that's all right, so we just get a little bit of idea of context as well. And yeah, we'll just throw it out to you. Has anyone got any questions? Oh no. Oh no.
Shall I go first?
Colin, thank you, mate. There you go. Yeah.
I'm Colin from Southend. We've got 3 churches in the live streams group of churches. I think one of the questions in our group, we were talking about the content of what the young people are looking for. They're talking about hybrid church and all those kinds of things, or even the podcasts. What is the content that young people specifically are looking for? Is it teaching, or is it worship, or is it prayer? What might it be? What are the things that young people are particularly looking for, whether it's online church or a separate kind of discipleship group thing, or what might it be? What content are you looking for?
And just to clarify, are you talking particularly as it, like, obviously have 4 speakers, but from the perspective of Christian young people or non-Christian young people, or both?
I was thinking particularly of 4 representatives here, but it could be wider than that, the non-Christian young people as well. So that's a further extension to the question, I guess.
Lovely. All right, can we start with Joel? How would you feel about giving that a go?
I sort of feel like what young people sort of want and like are looking for is just like space, if you know what I mean. So not anything particularly religious, I don't think, but just sort of like a space where, you know, they can communicate in church, or just a space where it's like kind of free and it's like just like empty, really. Just so you can sort of like talk and like just have your own space in your own time and sort of do what you want in particular. Obviously like Christian based or like church or religion based, but it would just be sort of like, I think what a lot of people are looking for is a free space, like particularly free of judgment, because that's what I think a lot of people our age sort of suffer from, is they are always too scared to be judged. And that's sort of a battle you need to like face in all scenarios, not just church, but because people don't want to be judged, and that's sort of a main fear, I think, of our age group. So just an empty space where there's no judgment would be ideal, I think.
So if we as a church decided to set something up online and said we're creating this non-judgmental space for young people to have a chat in, you think young people would sign up for that?
Yeah, I certainly feel like they would be more interested in joining that than something like, I don't know what an example would be, but just like an organized group with like a set like theme and like a set limitations of what you're allowed to talk about, or what it's based around. If it was just something where they could decide, or it was open for them to discuss what they wanted to discuss, or talk about what they want to talk about, then there'll be more interactive, I feel like.
Yeah. Right, thank you.
So anyone like in terms of Penny, Anna, Finlay, got any? Yeah, Penny.
So I think that a lot of young people, they really like it when you, I guess, kind of like talk to them, or like give them, I saw this thing and lots of people really liked it. It was like maybe like words of encouragement. They really like that. They like that stuff as well. And then they also like, some of them like storytelling sometimes as well. Some of them, a lot of people like different things, but what I saw when I was like kind of looking through things, so they like not really therapy session type things, but they like it when people can kind of like give them a little bit of a guidance for things as well. They like that type of stuff. When I used to have TikTok and everything like that, I used to have that stuff. Now I'm off it, but you know, when I used to have that stuff, I used to look at all the stuff that people liked. and some things would come on my For You page, and that's what I'd see sometimes, if you know what I mean.
Jane, you got a question?
Thank you. It's another question, so I don't know if any of the other youngsters wanted to add further in, but or should I just start with another question?
If you're going for another question, and then if anyone else, Finna or anyone else who didn't, or Anna, if you got, just pick and choose your question. If you feel like you want to add something to the last one, but
Okay.
we'll carry on. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on to speak to us as old people. We really appreciate it. And my name's Jane, and I'm down in Waltham Abbey, sort of the far southwest of the diocese. And my question was really about, obviously, the kinds of platforms we're using, because pretty much every church I know went online, went either for the Zoom kind of interaction or went for a sort of a mixture of YouTube/Facebook Live to record. And I wondered if those were the right platforms for you, or whether we should be looking to inhabit different places where you are, because it always strikes me that particularly things like Facebook are kind of slightly older, tends to be used by an older demographic. So I suppose my question is, are we using the right platforms that the young people yourselves would want to use?
Yeah, Anna, do you want to jump in? And it will go Anna and then Finlay. Yeah.
I think the YouTube, I use YouTube almost every day for a lot of different things. YouTube is a good one. I'd say I personally don't use Facebook very often. I use it for a few group chats for church. I think a lot of young people are on things like Instagram and TikTok. It's a very, very broad area, but in terms of attracting new young people to your church, it might be quite a good way to outreach, because it is a lot of a wider variety in terms of young people. I think Facebook is, I rarely use Facebook, but I know a lot of churches do use it, and it is a good platform. So I would say keep up with that. But YouTube is definitely a good one. I would say something like Instagram as well has quite a lot of young people on it.
Thanks, Anna. Finlay?
I completely agree with that. As I have mentioned earlier, I don't use vast amounts of social media, but I think for church services and for similar things, I think YouTube or something live is best. But to try and outreach, I would guess that the other kind of Instagram and the various other social media platforms would be better to kind of outreach.
That's awesome. Joel, you've got some thoughts on that?
What I wanted to say was YouTube works really well and for like live streams and services. But if you sort of wanted to gain like a wider reach of people, reach a lot of people, not necessarily like with church services, but just with like Christian content, I think TikTok works really well. And I'm gonna get a little bit computer nerdy now, but it has a different like algorithm to the other social medias, where when you're a new account, you get a higher chance of like getting higher views, and you like spread out to a lot more people on TikTok. And I've seen a lot of successful Christian accounts on there, a lot more than any other platform that I've seen really. So it's not very good for live streaming services because the live streams on there aren't very high quality. But if you wanted to set up Christian-based content, TikTok works really well, and you'll probably stand a better chance of getting a high like follower base and interest rate on TikTok than any other social media.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Joel, are you available as an IT consultant by any chance?
I don't know much, but I know a little bit.
Sounds like you know a lot more than me. Thank you.
It's awesome. Thanks, everyone. So Andy, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah. Well, let me take my hand down. How do I take my hand down? lower hand. There we go. Guys, it's brilliant to hear you. Great to hear such a breadth of opinions and different ideas coming out of it. I'd like to know, though, when you're looking at online activity, how long is too long for you to be online? That is to say, if we were producing some hybrid content, at what point would you go, no, that's too much? Physically, you know, what's the duration?
Oh, sorry, my one's gone really weird. Anna, go after you, so I'm going to try and sort my view out.
I think for me personally, I quite like watching long things. I can quite happily sit and watch something for quite a while, but a lot of kind of social media is moving to shorter forms, like TikTok is a lot of quite short videos. But I would say for me, the limit would probably be around half an hour, 45 minutes. Just because if it's not, I think if it's half an hour, 45 minutes of quite varied content, then you are going to keep people interested. But if it's, you know, sort of focused on one thing, or sort of not slow paced, but kind of a bit repetitive, then people might sort of lose interest or go and look at something else. So I think kind of it will depend on the content of what it is, but I would say 45 minutes probably for me, but that will be really, really different for a lot of people. And I think trial and error is quite key. You know, trialing and seeing what works and what doesn't will kind of help you to, I guess, find out what works better and kind of timing wise and things like that.
Penny, I think, did I see you wanted to jump in?
So for me, I think that my limit, and some not just me, but for some other people as well, I think that 20 minutes is probably a good place to, that's where I kind of draw my line for me. 20 minutes or maybe even 10 minutes sometimes. But if you wanted to, like, once in a while, maybe like you could do some like special live or something that could be over 30 minutes or 40 if you wanted it. But usually, like Anna kind of said about the short videos and everything, a lot of people are starting to move over to short videos now because people like short content. So I'd say about 10 or 20 minutes if you wanted to try, if you're talking about like how many minutes you wanted it to really be, and like and then for the special stuff, then you can do it for as long as you like, really. Yeah.
Awesome. Just before I can see Charlotte's got a hand up, I was just thinking.
Yeah, I'm just curious to sort of know in terms of what would work. We were talking a bit briefly about how we've always done church Sunday, because Sunday is the day church always used to go on, because our soul people grew up when nothing else was open on a Sunday, so Sunday was just church day and always has been. But I'm curious to know whether we need to look at different days, like a different time or an evening. And in terms of if you're doing like a 20-minute or half an hour service, would something like I was wondering how music would play a role in that. Do you find that helpful as young people or less distracting? And also, like you talk about questions, something like where you kind of had people posed a question, you just had a bit more spontaneous, because that kind of works. So if you've got someone who can just say, I've got this question, or it could be written down somewhere on a social media somewhere, or you could write it down, physically write it down like the week before, you could have a discussion, and then you link it to the Bible. Or how would you see it working best for you as young people? And so kind of the day of church music and the idea of that spontaneity, is that more useful? Do you prefer a bit more structure? That's what I was a bit more curious really.
I'll throw that out to Finlay. You're right to, have you got any thoughts on that?
Personally, I love debates and discussions. I yeah, my absolute favourite thing in the world is a debate. So for me, spontaneity and asking questions and discussing works much better than for me. But also at the same time, it needs to be spontaneity, but there needs to be a level of order. It almost needs to be spontaneity, but spontaneity kind of within a structure. There needs to be something to kind of keep control and keep the mechanism and plans and the length of times in place at the same time.
Awesome. Anna, did I say your?
I think music is a really, really good tool. I would say definitely keep music and use music. I love worship music. I found church so weird without music. I think it's a really great way to get people into churches. And there's a lot of kind of more modern musicians out there who have a Christian message that will really, I think, help young people find a different way to kind of keep their faith going and kind of grow their faith. In terms of the spontaneity, I think it's a really good, it's quite engaging if you're part of a live discussion. Obviously, you know, some structure, as Finley said, you don't want it to kind of, you know, be talking about what you had for dinner last night. You know, you want to stay on topic, but having a quite sort of open and honest conversation, I think for young people is quite important, having a space they can talk and chat about God and about their faith without feeling like they're going to be judged, because there's quite a lot of stigma around that, I think, in general society. Is really important and quite engaging for young people.
And do you think say starting with a song and then basing something on a song, or and then kind of doing it that way, so if music's a really good way in, just trying to think of ways that you could get people interested and say something like that based on it.
Yeah, I think yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a really nice structure. I've never thought of that before personally, but
no, I hadn't. I just was thinking.
No, I do quite like that. I think, you know, music can be quite thought-provoking. It's a good way to introduce a topic. You could have a related Bible story or something similar. But yeah, I think that it would definitely work.
Thanks.
Has anyone else got any thoughts on that? No. Any more sort of questions from the floor? Anyone? No. Okay. Well, I mean, I've got loads of questions. I'm loving it. I think it's really good. So we're gonna try and sort of come to an end in sort of, I don't know, 10 minutes ish. We're sort of aiming for about 20 past. But I mean, some of the questions have already been asked that I was thinking about. But from oh, hang on, sorry, there's something there. Hang on, what have I got there? Just saw something. Oh, that's Emma putting some helpful content into the chat if people want to go to that. And actually, before I ask my question, James made a good point. I think someone already asked as well. The group that you mentioned, what was it called? The Living Way. Just, you know, in case people are interested. And again, literally, while people have been talking, I've having people email. Apparently, there's lots of PCCs happening tonight. But people, but I'd imagine people are interested if, you know, can their young people be involved in that, and how would they go about it? Can I ask that of Emma or Charlie? Yeah, go on then, Charlie.
Yes, absolutely. So the Living Way is basically it started, Joel and Anna will know far more about this than me, but it started during just before the pandemic, and it started as an in-person event as a way of life, basically. So a group of young Christians wanting to journey through things together and explore their faith, deepen their understanding of who Jesus is and the impact their faith has on their life. And so it started face to face, and then obviously the pandemic happened and everything got moved online. But actually what that has meant it's been something that has been able to happen on a weekly basis during term time, which is really exciting. And actually, I think it was Joel that was saying the other day, it's felt that we've been able to deepen those relationships and grow together in a much more exciting journey in a way, because it's not just once a month, it's every week meeting together. And we meet on Monday evenings, so it's basically from like 4:45 for an hour, and we meet on Zoom, and basically the young people, for some of the time, the young people lead the sessions themselves, so it's a brilliant like leadership opportunity of like taking ownership of the sessions and planning the sessions and running them themselves. During exam time at the moment, we've said, look, team, like we totally understand that you're finding things like quite stressful, and there's a lot of pressure on your time. So myself and Bishop Roger, so the Bishop of Colchester, and Emma and Anne, our other colleague, and Colin, who is one of the priests in our diocese. So we as a team, sort of a couple of us are there every week. And we basically have taken on this term, helping to facilitate different discussions that the young people want to have. So the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at animal welfare. It's been quite intense, I'm not going to lie. It's been very deep, very theological, very exciting. We've had some really interesting discussion. But yeah, we look at all different topics, and it is open to all young people in the Diocese of Chelmsford. So yes, if you've got young people who are exploring faith or going on the journey of faith and want to find out more, please don't hesitate to get in contact with myself or Emma. Our details are all on the diocese website. So yeah, please do be in contact and we can send you some information.
Awesome. Emma, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, I was just going to mention as well about Youth Synod, because as I said, these four guys are all been part of that as well. And if you're like Finlay and you like a good debate and a good conversation within a structure, then Youth Synod, and you know, some of the conversation tonight has come out of that, and it's just really helpful to have young people's genuine voices and experience speaking into that. And we do speak into diocesan synod as well, so it's a really important forum and a place for young people to give their opinions.
Just so why Emma and Charlie, you're on it, because I was going to jump in saying it was, but I don't know, people may want to know this, but in terms of sort of online safeguarding and that kind of stuff, I know sometimes, you know, so where I'm based, there's a Pioneer Vicary type in Walthamstow. Whenever I'm talking about online stuff, people and then immediately often go to, what about safeguarding? Are there resources out there? Because, you know, every church doesn't want to keep, you know, endlessly going through paperwork, updating stuff. Is there a place that we can go, like resources that the diocese have that churches can use, that kind of thing, when it comes to online safeguarding and whatever?
We're just looking to see who's going to answer.
I was going to say, Emma, you take it.
I mean, obviously the diocese follows the national safeguarding, so that's the place to go. Everything you need is in that national, you know, the national safeguarding, and it's all on the diocesan website that James has very kindly just put the link in there. So everything that you need, and there is stuff about digital and online. If you're not sure, then contact one of us and we can kind of point you in the right direction or give you some support and advice. Really, it's the same as in person. It's just making sure that everybody's safe, making sure that you're, you know, there's not any kind of one-to-one, making sure there are kind of ground rules in place for what people say and how people behave. But yeah, it's all within that national safeguarding guidance.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, James, for popping that in there. I just thought it's helpful to ask, because again, whether people here or people who watch later on, it's just helpful to know, to be able to steer to. I've been attacked by two very over affectionate puppies while you were talking, which is very sweet, but also a little bit weird. So I guess, I mean, realistically, I mean, there are lots of questions, and I'm wondering if, you know, perhaps there's a forum in the future where, you know, if we wanted to have some of these conversations, because I think, you know, what all four, Anna, Joel, Finlay, Penny, what you brought tonight has been super helpful, particularly for me going away and doing some more of my thinking around this kind of stuff. You know, perhaps we could do something like it again in the future. You know, and get you guys back and, you know, sort of keep these conversations going, because I know I'm really interested in what it looks like. And I suppose I just, one last thing that I wanted to ask was, often, so I like to champion sort of online mission, hybrid church ways, you know, physical, being in person, as well as, you know, being present online where people are, because I think we all, you know, a lot of people operate in that way. But there are, naturally, across the diocese, across the country, there are church leaders who are worried that, you know, actually everything's going to fall apart. You know, we must stick to in-person only, as otherwise, for some reason, you know, maybe the spirit won't move or God can't work. But then equally, there are people on the other end saying we must all be online. You know, going to in-person churches, you know, it's irrelevant. You know, where do you kind of sit on that? What do you think about those? How would you, I guess, relieve the fears of those who think that, you know, everyone's going online, and how would you combat the idea of people who just want to scrap everything online and just only do in person? What's your thoughts, Joel? Straight in and straight up.
I sort of feel like church in person, it's sort of like a tradition, like it's something that you can't really just get rid of, because it is, you know, it's something that's been around since the start of the church. And it's something that, you know, if you think of church, I don't think no matter how far down the road you go, someone's always going to picture it in the church building, because it's just a classic like symbol of church and the Christian faith. And I feel like you can't get rid of that, but equally you need to move on to online stuff, because it like the aim of God is to like spread the, like what God wants us to do is spread the word of God, and you can't access those people, like the majority of people nowadays, without using technology. So I sort of feel like you have to use a balance. So technology could be used to like teach people about God and spread the word of God, but like actual church building can be used for services, is my opinion, because you need both of them if you want to reach out to everyone, but you also need to keep it traditional, because it's what people are used to and it's what people want and expect. So if you can get the balance of that right, it works really well, I think.
Thanks, Joe. I see Penny's got her hand up now. She's prepared now.
Okay, so thinking about back on that question again. For me personally, I go to church every Sunday, and I also, I do serve as well. Like I'm an acolyte for things as well. But for me, sometimes I also have to help out. For me, we also do at my church, we do a mixture. Yeah, we do online church, and we do in-person church as well. But we live stream the services a lot, and sometimes I have to help out with that. I think that, like I had mentioned before, if some people want to do one thing, then that's okay with them, because you can't please everyone, like I've said before. It's kind of true though, actually it is true that you can't please everyone all the time, so you kind of have to find out a way to make you
It's kind of finding a way to make the two come together, you mean?
Yeah.
Super helpful. Thanks, Ben. That's really... Anna, you wanted to say some stuff?
Yeah, I think technology and the way in which we use it now is so great, and it's such a good tool that it shouldn't really be sort of, I guess, ignored in a way. I think obviously everybody missed in-person church, and it's hard to please everyone, as Penny just said. But in-person church is still really important, that we keep kind of face-to-face connections going. I think that's quite healthy. But also online is such a great tool, and it's such a good way to keep people who might not feel comfortable going back to church, whether that's because they're scared of judgment, maybe they're housebound, suffering with chronic illness or something like that. They still feel included. I think a lot of kind of the way online church has come about has kind of increased inclusivity for the church. So it's a really good way to keep that going. But also in-person church is still, I think, quite important to keep kind of face-to-face connections and having physical worship, as well as including people who might not feel comfortable coming back to church.
Super helpful, thanks. Any last thoughts? All good? Amazing, thanks so much. I really super appreciate it. And Joel, Penny, Finlay, just I've got loads of stuff that I've written down, loads of great insights as well, and this is definitely a conversation we want to keep going. Bex has got the little clap hands there. I'll give you a little clap as well. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. So I think the only thing really left to do is maybe if I just sort of pray to bring us to an end, that would be helpful. You know, we're talking about the intersection of faith and online. What's a better way to end than with a quick prayer? Father God, I just thank you, Lord, for all that we've heard this evening. Thank you, Lord, for Anna, for Joel, for Penny, for Finlay, Lord. Thank you for all that they bring to their communities, to their churches, to the people that they're around, and those that they engage with both online and in person, for those that they share the gospel with, Lord. Thank you for who they are, who you created them to be, and who you're helping them to grow into. Just thank you, Lord, for all the investment that's gone into them, and just pray, Lord, that you continue to raise them up, Lord. They're not just the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of right now, of today, and we've learned so much from them. And so I just pray your blessing will be poured out on them and over their lives, in Jesus' name, amen. Great. So I think if it's all right, I'm gonna ask our little team just to stay on just for a little bit, but we're gonna end the recording and we're gonna end the session. And what will be really good as well is, if you wouldn't mind, this will at some point in the next few days, it will go online and we're gonna try and promote it, but it'll be really good as well for those who are here. Spread the word. You know, we want to keep these webinars going, and we want to find out what would be, you know, things like this, good discussions. We're going to start doing some hybrid stuff where we're in person as well as online. So please do send us some feedback as well, because that would be super helpful. So God bless everyone. Take care.